In Dubai's Golden Towers, some secrets are worth killing for. And when 34-year-old Layla fell for her teenage driver, 3 people would discover that forbidden love has the highest price of all. If you're fascinated by the dark secrets behind Dubai's elite society and how forbidden love can turn deadly, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more shocking true crime stories. But let's go back to where it all began. In 2024, when Layla Al-Rashid first laid eyes on the young man who would become both her salvation and her destruction, Layla Al-Rashid lived in a mansion that most people could only dream of. The sprawling villa in Emirates Hills, Dubai's most exclusive neighborhood, was worth $12 million and came complete with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and an infinity pool that overlooked the city's glittering skyline. At 34, she was the perfect trophy wife, beautiful, elegant, and completely trapped. Her husband, Rashid Al-Mansouri, was 58 years old and one of Dubai's most successful real estate developers. He had built his fortune constructing luxury hotels and shopping centers across the Emirates, and his wealth had bought him everything he wanted, including a wife young enough to be his daughter. Layla had married Rashid when she was just 22, fresh out of university and desperate to escape her family's financial problems. Her father's construction business had failed during the 2008 financial crisis, leaving the family drowning in debt. When Rashid proposed after knowing her for only 3 months, Layla saw it as her family's salvation. For 12 years, she had played the role perfectly. She attended charity galas, hosted dinner parties for Rashid's business associates, and smiled for photographers at social events. But behind the designer clothes and expensive jewelry, Layla was slowly suffocating. Rashid treated her more like a possession than a wife. He controlled every aspect of her life: where she went, who she spoke to, what she wore. He had installed security cameras throughout the house and assigned bodyguards to follow her whenever she left the property. He claimed it was for her protection, but Layla knew it was about control. Their marriage was loveless and cold. Rashid was often away on business trips, and when he was home, he showed more affection to his prized Arabian horses than to his wife. Layla had no children. Rashid had made it clear that he didn't want to share her attention with anyone else. The isolation was crushing. Layla had lost touch with most of her old friends after marriage, and the wives in her social circle were more interested in competition than genuine friendship. She spent her days wandering through the empty mansion, reading books, and dreaming of a different life. That's when Ahmad entered her world. Ahmad Hassan was 19 years old, the son of a Pakistani immigrant who worked as a mechanic in Dubai's industrial district. He was tall, handsome, with dark eyes that sparkled with intelligence and ambition. Despite his humble background, he carried himself with quiet confidence and spoke 3 languages fluently. Rashid had hired Ahmad as Layla's personal driver after his previous driver retired. The young man needed the job desperately. His father was sick, and his family depended on his income to survive. The salary Rashid offered was more than Ahmad could make anywhere else, enough to support his family and save money for his own future. From the moment Ahmad walked into the Al-Rashid mansion, Layla felt something she hadn't experienced in years: genuine human connection. Unlike the other staff members who treated her with formal deference, Ahmad looked her in the eyes when he spoke to her. He asked about her day, remembered small details about her preferences, and treated her like a real person rather than an ornament. At first, their interactions were purely professional. Ahmad would drive Layla to her appointments, wait patiently while she shopped or attended social events, and escort her safely home. But gradually, they began to talk during their drives through Dubai's busy streets. Layla learned that Ahmad was studying business administration at night school, working toward a degree that would help him start his own company someday. He was intelligent, ambitious, and had dreams that extended far beyond his current circumstances. He spoke passionately about his plans to build a logistics company that would serve the growing e-commerce market in the Middle East. For his part, Ahmad saw through Layla's perfect facade to the lonely, trapped woman underneath. He noticed how her smile faded when she thought no one was looking, how she would stare out the car window with such sadness in her eyes. He began to understand that wealth and luxury meant nothing when you were living in a prison. Their friendship developed slowly, carefully. Layla would ask Ahmad to take longer routes to their destinations so they could talk more. She began requesting trips to art galleries and bookstores, places where they could walk together and discuss literature, politics, and philosophy. Ahmad was well-read despite his youth, and their conversations were the highlight of Layla's empty days. The turning point came during Ramadan, when Rashid was away on a month-long business trip to London. Layla was alone in the mansion except for the household staff, and the isolation was becoming unbearable. One evening, she asked Ahmad to drive her to the Dubai fountain for the evening show. As they stood together watching the water dance to music against the backdrop of the Burj Khalifa, Layla felt something she hadn't experienced in over a decade: happiness. For the first time in years, she wasn't performing for anyone or pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was simply herself, standing next to someone who saw her as a complete person. "I feel like I can breathe when I'm with you," she whispered to Ahmad as they walked back to the car. Ahmad stopped walking and turned to face her. "Mrs. Al-Rashid, Layla," she interrupted. "Please, just call me Layla." That night, something shifted between them. The formal barriers that had kept them at a safe distance began to crumble, replaced by an electric tension that neither of them could ignore. The golden cage that had protected Layla for 12 years was about to become the stage for a love story that would end in blood. Their first kiss changed everything, but in Dubai's unforgiving society, some love stories are written in blood. When Layla and Ahmad crossed the line from friendship to passion, they sealed their fate. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. This forbidden love story is about to take a deadly turn that will shock you. But let's go back to April 2024, when their secret affair began and 3 lives started racing toward a tragic collision. The affair that began with a stolen kiss in the Miracle Garden quickly consumed both Layla and Ahmad. Their meetings became more frequent and more dangerous. Layla would dismiss her staff early, claiming she needed privacy for charity calls. Ahmad would park in secluded areas of Dubai Marina, where they could talk without being observed by the security cameras that monitored every corner of the city. The physical relationship began 3 weeks after their first kiss. Layla had asked Ahmad to drive her to Dubai Mall, but instead they found themselves in a quiet corner of the parking garage, unable to resist the magnetic pull between them. "This is madness," Ahmad whispered as he held her face in his hands. "If anyone sees us, I don't care anymore," Layla replied desperately. "I've been dead for 12 years. You're the only thing that makes me feel alive." They began meeting at a small apartment in Dera that Ahmad rented under a false name, using cash Layla provided. The modest flat became their sanctuary, the only place where they could be themselves without fear of discovery. Ahmad was torn between his love for Layla and his growing guilt. He knew their relationship was not just forbidden, it was potentially fatal. In Dubai, adultery was a serious crime, and the consequences for a Pakistani driver having an affair with an Emirati businessman's wife could be catastrophic. But their secret was becoming harder to maintain. Layla's behavior was changing in ways that even the household staff began to notice. She was happier, more energetic, and spent more time away from the mansion. Fatima, the elderly housekeeper, began to suspect something was different. "Madam seems very happy lately," she mentioned to other staff members. "She's always smiling, always singing." The comment reached Hassan, the head of security. Hassan was a former police officer hired specifically to monitor Layla's activities. He began paying closer attention to her movements, noting the extended shopping trips and the way she seemed to glow with happiness. Meanwhile, Rashid noticed changes in his wife that made him uncomfortable. She seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone, and showed little interest in social events. "You seem different lately," he told her over dinner. "More energetic. Are you taking some new medication?" "I've been working with a new fitness trainer," Layla managed to reply calmly. That night, Rashid called Hassan. "I want you to increase surveillance on my wife. Something is different about her behavior." Hassan had been waiting for this conversation. "I've already noticed some irregularities, sir. Should I begin formal monitoring?" "Do whatever is necessary, but be discreet." The net was closing around Layla and Ahmad, but they were too intoxicated by love to notice. The breaking point came when Layla told her husband she was attending a 3-day women's retreat in Abu Dhabi. Instead, she and Ahmad spent 3 days together at a beach resort in Fujairah. Those 3 days were the happiest of Layla's adult life. They lived as husband and wife, walked on the beach, and talked about an impossible future. "I wish we could stay here forever," Layla whispered as they watched the sunset. "Maybe we can find a way to be together," Ahmad replied, though his voice lacked conviction. But Hassan had used those 3 days to conduct a thorough investigation. He traced phone records, reviewed security footage, and interviewed staff members. The evidence was damning. Photographs of Layla and Ahmad together, records of the apartment rental, evidence of cash payments. When Rashid returned, Hassan presented him with a comprehensive report detailing his wife's affair with devastating precision. Rashid read in silence, his face growing darker with each page. The humiliation was unbearable. Not just the adultery, but that she had chosen a Pakistani driver, a man so far beneath their social status. "What do you recommend?" he asked Hassan quietly. "In cases like this, there are several options. We could confront them directly, involve authorities, or handle the matter more privately. I want them both to understand the consequences of their actions. But I also want to protect my reputation." "I understand, sir. Leave it to me." As Hassan left to begin planning, neither Layla nor Ahmad knew their secret had been discovered. They were planning another meeting, another stolen afternoon in their sanctuary. But their sanctuary was about to become a trap, and their love story was about to become a tragedy that would shock Dubai's elite society. Hassan's surveillance had uncovered everything, but Rashid wanted more than evidence. He wanted revenge. When the lovers walked into their secret apartment for the last time, they had no idea they were walking into a carefully planned trap. Make sure you're subscribed because this story is about to take a shocking turn that will leave you speechless. But let's go back to May 5th, 2024, when Layla and Ahmad's perfect love story became a perfect nightmare. Hassan had spent 2 weeks planning the perfect trap. He knew about the apartment in Dara, knew their schedule, knew exactly when they would be most vulnerable. Rashid had given him simple instructions. Make them both understand the consequences of their betrayal, but do it quietly. "I don't want a scandal," Rashid had told him. "Handle this in a way that protects my reputation." Hassan understood perfectly. In Dubai's elite circles, reputation was everything. A messy public divorce involving adultery would damage Rashid's business relationships and social standing. The solution needed to be permanent and discreet. On May 5th, Layla told her household staff she was attending a charity meeting that would last several hours. Ahmad picked her up as usual, but instead of driving to their secret apartment, Hassan's men were already waiting inside. The couple entered the small flat laughing, completely unaware of the danger. They had been planning to spend the afternoon together before Rashid returned from his latest business trip. It was supposed to be a celebration. They had finally decided to run away together, to start a new life somewhere far from Dubai's suffocating social constraints. "After today, we won't have to hide anymore," Layla whispered to Ahmad as he unlocked the apartment door. Those were the last words she would ever speak as a free woman. Hassan and 2 of his men were waiting in the living room. The moment Layla and Ahmad stepped inside, they found themselves facing 3 armed men who had been watching their every move for weeks. "Mrs. Al-Rashid," Hassan said calmly, "your husband would like to have a word with you." The terror in Layla's eyes was immediate and complete. She grabbed Ahmad's hand, but Hassan's men quickly separated them, forcing Ahmad to his knees while restraining Layla. "Please," Ahmad begged. "This is between me and Mr. Al-Rashid. Let her go." Hassan smiled coldly. "You're both going to learn that some mistakes have permanent consequences." What happened next would haunt the investigators who eventually discovered the scene. Hassan had brought tools, not just weapons, but instruments designed to send a message. The torture lasted for hours, with Hassan methodically extracting confessions, details, and pleas for mercy. Layla broke first, sobbing as she begged for Ahmad's life. "Kill me, but please let him go. He's just a boy. This is all my fault." But Hassan wasn't interested in mercy. Rashid had been very specific about what he wanted. Both lovers needed to disappear, but their deaths needed to look like something else entirely. Ahmad fought until the end, trying to protect Layla, even as Hassan's men held him down. His last words were a promise. "I love you, Layla. I'll find you in the next life." When it was over, Hassan called Rashid to report that the problem had been solved. The bodies were disposed of in the desert, far from Dubai's gleaming towers. The apartment was cleaned thoroughly, all evidence of the affair erased. But Hassan had made one crucial mistake. In his rush to clean the scene, he had missed Ahmad's phone, which had fallen behind a radiator during the struggle. The device contained months of encrypted messages between the lovers, photographs of their time together, and most damning of all, a voice recording Ahmad had made just before they entered the apartment. "If something happens to us," Ahmad's voice would later tell investigators, "look for Hassan al-Mahmoud. He works for Rashid al-Mansuri. He's been following us for weeks." 3 days later, when Ahmad failed to return home, his family reported him missing. When Layla didn't return from her charity meeting, Rashid played the role of the concerned husband perfectly, filing a missing person report and offering a reward for information. But Dubai police were more thorough than Hassan had anticipated. When they discovered the apartment and found Ahmad's hidden phone, the entire conspiracy began to unravel. The investigation that followed would expose not just a double murder, but a web of surveillance, control, and violence that reached into the highest levels of Dubai society. Rashid al-Mansuri, the respected businessman, was about to discover that in Dubai, justice applies to everyone, even the wealthy elite who think they're above the law. The discovery of Ahmad's hidden phone changed everything, but Dubai police were about to uncover evidence that would shock even seasoned investigators. When the truth finally emerged, it would expose a web of surveillance, torture, and murder that reached the highest levels of society. Don't forget to subscribe. This investigation is about to reveal how Dubai's elite dispose of their problems when money and power are threatened. But let's go back to May 8th, 2024, when Detective Inspector Sarah Al-Zahra first walked into that blood-stained apartment and began piecing together a puzzle of betrayal and murder. Detective Inspector Sarah Al-Zahra had seen her share of crime scenes in 15 years with Dubai police, but the apartment in Dara told a story that made her stomach turn. The forensic team had already processed most of the evidence, but the hidden phone behind the radiator was the breakthrough they needed. Ahmad's final recording was chilling. "If something happens to us, look for Hassan al-Mahmoud. He works for Rashid al-Mansuri. He's been following us for weeks." Within hours, Al-Zahra had assembled a task force to investigate the disappearances of both Layla Al-Rashid and Ahmad Hassan. The case was sensitive. Rashid al-Mansuri was one of Dubai's most prominent businessmen, with connections throughout the government and business community. The investigation began with Hassan al-Mahmoud. When police arrived at his apartment, they found a man who had been expecting them. Hassan's military training had taught him to prepare for every contingency, but he hadn't counted on Ahmad's foresight. "I want to speak to a lawyer," Hassan said calmly as officers placed him under arrest. But the evidence was overwhelming. The apartment contained surveillance equipment, photographs of Layla and Ahmad together, and detailed reports documenting their affair. Most damning of all was Hassan's own phone, which contained text messages from Rashid, giving explicit instructions about handling the problem permanently. The forensic evidence from the apartment painted a horrific picture. Blood spatter analysis showed that both victims had been tortured for hours before being killed. DNA evidence confirmed that both Layla and Ahmad had been in the apartment, and trace evidence suggested their bodies had been moved after death. Al-Zahra's team traced Hassan's movements on the day of the murders, using Dubai's extensive CCTV network. They found footage of Hassan and two accomplices entering the apartment building at 2 p.m., just before Layla and Ahmad arrived. More footage showed them leaving at 8 p.m., carrying large bags to a waiting van. The breakthrough came when police tracked the van to a construction site owned by one of Rashid's companies. Ground-penetrating radar revealed two shallow graves in the desert, 50 kilometers outside Dubai. The bodies of Layla and Ahmad were recovered 3 days later, showing signs of extensive torture before they were killed. Rashid's arrest came at dawn on May 15th. Police surrounded his mansion in Emirates Hills as he was preparing for his morning prayers. The man who had controlled every aspect of his wife's life found himself powerless as officers read him his rights. "This is a mistake," Rashid told the arresting officers. "I am a respected businessman. I would never harm my wife." But the evidence told a different story. Phone records showed dozens of calls between Rashid and Hassan in the days leading up to the murders. Financial records revealed payments to Hassan's accomplices, and surveillance footage from the construction site showed Rashid personally overseeing the burial of the bodies. The trial that followed would captivate Dubai and expose the dark underbelly of the city's elite society. Rashid hired the best lawyers money could buy, but they couldn't overcome the mountain of evidence against him. Hassan, facing the death penalty, agreed to testify against his former employer in exchange for a life sentence. His testimony revealed the full extent of Rashid's control over his wife and his willingness to commit murder to protect his reputation. "He told me that his honor was worth more than their lives," Hassan testified. He said that a Pakistani driver touching his wife was an insult that could only be washed away with blood. The prosecution painted a picture of a man so consumed with control and pride that he was willing to torture and murder two people rather than face the humiliation of divorce. The defense argued that Rashid was a victim of his own cultural conditioning, but the jury wasn't convinced. On October 12, 2024, Rashid Al-Mansouri was sentenced to death for the premeditated murder of his wife and her lover. Hassan received life in prison, while his two accomplices were sentenced to 25 years each. The case sent shockwaves through Dubai's elite community. For the first time, one of their own had been held accountable for murder, proving that wealth and connections couldn't protect someone from justice when the evidence was overwhelming. Layla's family, who had been ostracized by society for her affair, finally received some measure of justice. Ahmad's parents, devastated by the loss of their son, found solace in knowing that his killers would pay for their crimes. The golden towers of Dubai still gleamed in the desert sun, but the city's elite now knew that some secrets were too dark to hide, and some crimes too heinous to escape punishment. Love had indeed come at the highest price of all. 3 lives destroyed by one man's obsession with control and honor. The trial of Rashid Al-Mansouri would expose the darkest secrets of Dubai's elite. But when the final verdict was read, it would prove that in the UAE, justice applies to everyone, even the wealthy and powerful who think they're above the law. Make sure you're subscribed because this final chapter will show you how a love story that began in luxury ended with the ultimate price being paid by all involved. But let's go back to the courtroom in Dubai, where the fate of 3 lives would finally be decided. The trial of Rashid Al-Mansouri began on August 15, 2024, in Dubai's Federal Supreme Court. The case had attracted international attention, with media outlets from around the world covering what many called the trial of the century in the UAE. For the first time, one of Dubai's most prominent businessmen was facing the death penalty for murder. The prosecution, led by Chief Prosecutor Amir Al-Zahra, had built an overwhelming case against Rashid and his accomplices. The evidence was methodical and devastating. Phone records, financial transactions, surveillance footage, forensic evidence from the apartment, and most damning of all, Hassan's detailed confession. "This case is about more than murder," Al-Zahra told the packed courtroom during her opening statement. "It's about a man who believed his wealth and status gave him the right to control, torture, and kill. It's about a system of abuse that treated a young woman as property and a young man as disposable." Rashid's defense team, led by renowned criminal lawyer Khalid Al-Mansouri, attempted to paint their client as a victim of cultural pressures and emotional distress. They argued that discovering his wife's affair had caused temporary insanity, and that Hassan had acted beyond his instructions. "My client is not a monster," Al-Mansouri argued. "He is a man who was driven to desperation by the ultimate betrayal. In our culture, honor is everything. When that honor is destroyed, men can do things they would never normally consider." But the prosecution's case was too strong to overcome with cultural arguments. The evidence showed premeditation, planning, and a cold-blooded execution that lasted for hours. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a carefully orchestrated double murder designed to protect Rashid's reputation and business interests. Hassan's testimony was the most dramatic moment of the trial. The former security chief, now facing life in prison, provided chilling details about the torture and murder of Layla and Ahmad. His voice was steady as he described how Rashid had given explicit instructions about making the lovers understand the consequences of their betrayal. "He told me that his wife had disgraced him by choosing a Pakistani driver," Hassan testified. He said that such an insult could only be washed away with blood. He wanted them both to suffer before they died, to understand what their love had cost. The defense tried to discredit Hassan's testimony, arguing that he was lying to reduce his own sentence. But the physical evidence supported every detail of his account. The forensic pathologist testified that both victims had been tortured for hours before being killed, exactly as Hassan had described. Ahmad's family provided some of the most emotional testimony of the trial. His father, a simple mechanic who had worked his entire life to provide for his family, broke down as he described his son's dreams and ambitions. Ahmad was a good boy, his father sobbed. He worked hard. He studied at night. He sent money home to help his sick mother. He didn't deserve to die like an animal in the desert. Layla's family was notably absent from the trial. Her parents and siblings had been ostracized by their community for her affair, and they chose to grieve privately rather than face the media circus surrounding the case. The prosecution also called Dr. Layla Al-Rashid, a forensic psychologist who had examined the evidence and interviewed the surviving participants. Her testimony painted a picture of systematic abuse and control that had characterized Layla's marriage from the beginning. Mrs. Al-Rashid was living in what we call a golden cage, Dr. Al-Rashid explained. She had material wealth, but no freedom, no autonomy, no voice in her own life. Her affair with Ahmad was not just about love. It was about reclaiming her humanity. The defense's attempts to justify the murders fell flat with the jury. Dubai's legal system, based on Islamic law, does recognize honor as a mitigating factor in certain cases, but the premeditated nature of the crimes and the extensive torture made such arguments irrelevant. The trial lasted 6 weeks, with testimony from over 40 witnesses and hundreds of pieces of evidence. The international media coverage was intense, with many outlets focusing on the clash between traditional values and modern justice in the UAE. On October 1st, 2024, the jury began their deliberations. They returned with a verdict after just 8 hours. Judge Ahmed Al Maktoum read the verdict in a packed courtroom. In the case of the state versus Rashid Al-Mansuri, Hassan Al-Mahmoud, and accomplices, we find the defendants guilty of premeditated murder in the first degree. The sentences were swift and severe. Rashid Al-Mansuri was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Hassan Al-Mahmoud received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The 2 accomplices were sentenced to 25 years each. As the sentences were read, Rashid showed no emotion. He had maintained his innocence throughout the trial, claiming that he was being framed by enemies who wanted to destroy his business empire. But the evidence had been overwhelming, and the jury had seen through his lies. The appeals process took another 6 months, but the verdicts were upheld at every level. The UAE Supreme Court ruled that the evidence was conclusive and that the sentences were appropriate for the severity of the crimes. On March 15, 2025, exactly 1 year after the murders, Rashid Al-Mansuri was executed at Dubai Central Prison. His last words, according to prison officials, were a continued proclamation of innocence. The case had far-reaching implications for Dubai's elite society. For the first time, wealth and connections had failed to protect someone from the consequences of murder. The message was clear. In the UAE, justice applies to everyone, regardless of their social status or financial resources. Ahmad's family used the compensation money from Rashid's seized assets to establish a scholarship fund for young Pakistani immigrants studying in the UAE. The fund, named in Ahmad's honor, helps young people pursue their dreams of education and success. Layla's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of arranged marriages and the importance of women's rights in traditional societies. Several UAE women's rights organizations used her case to advocate for stronger protections for women in abusive relationships. The apartment in Dara where the murders took place was demolished, and the site was turned into a small memorial garden. A plaque commemorates all victims of domestic violence and honor crimes, though it doesn't mention Layla and Ahmad by name. Hassan remains in prison, where he has reportedly become a model prisoner. He has expressed remorse for his actions and has cooperated with authorities in several other investigations involving Dubai's elite families. The case of Layla Al-Rashid and Ahmad Hassan serves as a reminder that love, no matter how forbidden, is a powerful force that can challenge even the most rigid social structures. Their tragic story shows that in Dubai's Golden Towers, some secrets are indeed worth killing for, but justice, when it finally comes, is worth even more. In the end, 3 lives were lost to one man's obsession with control and honor, but their deaths were not in vain. They exposed a system of abuse and showed that even in the most traditional societies, love and justice can triumph over power and privilege. The golden cage had finally been broken, but the price of freedom had been paid in blood.